Okay, well, it's my turn in the hot seat. I'm Claire Beaumont, a partner at Gorvins Solicitors in Stockport, and I'm going to be steering the podcast today. I'm going to be talking to a number of property professionals from across the sector to discuss repurposing of the high street and commercial property, the general current trends, what the future holds, and what it's like for recruiting people at the moment and what challenges we've got in the sector. I want to welcome all the panellists, and if you'd all like to introduce yourselves.
Hi folks, my name's Rob Henderson. I'm the Managing Director of JDA Architects. We're sort of very much focused on care and residential sort of development, and actually more recently in terms of retrofitting as well, which might come up in the conversation, I think. So,
Richard Walters from Broadgrove Planning and Development, a Stockport-based planning consultancy. We're involved in a lot of regeneration and planning regeneration across the UK, but predominantly across the northwest.
Hi, I'm Nigel Blythe, Managing Director of Fairhurst, Buckley. We're a firm of chartered surveyors and commercial property specialists based in Stockport. We do a lot of work in the Stockport area on the agency front, but we also do work nationwide for corporate clients as well.
Hi everyone, my name's Tony Houlihan, Lime Property. We're developers and investors. We do a lot of work around the northwest, based in Stockport, and really interested to chat to everyone this afternoon.
Okay, so we'll get started. Firstly, how was everyone's weekend? Good? Bit of sunshine?
my eldest's 30th.
Oh.
Which just made me incredibly old. So no, it wasn't great.
Were you even invited to celebrate?
just, yeah, absolutely.
Well, we'll get on to it. Even before the pandemic, analysts were sort of predicting that the concept was changing vastly on the high street. How are we all seeing examples of that?
I think we're seeing a lot from the planning side of things, and it's a national picture. Again, it's not just a local picture in Stockport. But there's always been over the years from a planning-driven approach of retaining the high street, the retail element, and that's changed, beyond any comprehension over the last sort of 10, 15 years. But it seems to have fast-tracked through the sort of COVID period, and it's now a case of repurposing those town centres. They're not that retail focus anymore. It's about reinventing them, getting people into them at different times, and we're seeing a lot of sort of changes in that from whether it be residential, whether it be the changes in the nature of retail, leisure activities. So I think Stockport's a pretty good example of that, actually, in terms of what the council have done, what the private investment and the market's doing. But that's a national picture. I'm sure you all see that in the towns that you're from or you live and you're based in. Everyone's got their own similar story to that. So
going back to what you were saying about COVID accelerating it, I think it's exactly that, really. I think the high street was changing a lot beforehand, and COVID just made that change a lot quicker. So online retailing has made a massive difference to the retail sector as a whole. I think increasing costs of bricks and mortar retailing, increasing rents, come on to this later in terms of staff costs as well, business rates, the whole sort of cost outlook for retailers has been quite hard for them. COVID kind of just accelerated that, really, and what it's actually done is fueled more interest in the industrial market at the expense of the retail market. So you've got a real sort of contrast in what's happened.
In town centres, though, the influx of people is going to be the key. That's going to keep town centres going, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you look at Manchester now, look at just how many young people are gravitating to the town centre, which is great, but it's down the road. Do you think Stockport's going to be able to keep track of Manchester? Can it keep its own people here? Because I think that's a struggle.
I actually think some of it's happening the other way. You're getting people moving from Manchester to Stockport because it's more affordable. You just logistically, and it's good a place. You can get to London in 2 hours. You can get to Manchester in 10 minutes. So, there's some really good options, and seeing some of the new resi stuff coming through and all the hospitality that backs it up. Not that I go to the pub a lot, but, it's great to see all the new venues popping up to support the people that are going to be living around here.
It's that balance, isn't it? The critical mass is going to be there over the next few years with the MDC and the amount of residential and that sort of central focus. But as you say, it's got to have the facilities and the amenities to support that, because it won't retain them unless it's got the...
So it's about timing as well, I think, because there's a lot of stuff being built at the moment, but there's not that many people moving into it yet. So there's a lot of stock on its way, and you need the people living there, and you need the residents in the town centre to really make the leisure stuff work. And I think some people maybe have gone a little bit early on the leisure and it's not quite there yet. So, what's happening after 8 or 9 o'clock at night? Is there anything there? So the marketplace has done really well in terms of sort of keeping people out, but the underbanks, there's still a way to go there, but it will come when more and more people move in, I think.
What do you think users and occupiers are looking for in the high street? Obviously, users and occupiers are looking for different things, but what sort of things do you think they're looking for?
That's a really tough question. To activate the high street, there's got to be that movement, hasn't there, that people are actually going to go into the stores, into the shops, but they seem to be going away. So it's much more the sort of hospitality that seems to be filling those voids. So the micro bars, there's one around the corner, isn't there? It's that sort of facility that people are using, because I think you're at risk of having. There's only so much space for barbers. That we can have, on that side of things, there's got to be a critical mass to that too. So we've got to find those alternative uses, like the hospitality. For me, I think that the flats, the high rise, and even the transport interchange, it's going to be a real test bed, isn't it? That's going to lift the values, as you were saying, Tony. And then all of a sudden, it's self-generating, but that should change the face, I think, of Stockport completely, to making sure that it now works.
There's a lot of apartments going up, as well as there's not a lot of housing going up. All these new developments all seem to be flats, which obviously lend themselves to a certain demographic.
I think it's with the flats, it's hard for developers, I think, to come up with schemes that involve houses, because when you're in competition with other people, you get the most density out of a flat scheme anyway. So we've looked at a couple of schemes where there was one that we looked at where we were looking at back-to-back almost terraces, and you say back-to-back to the planning officer, and it's like, well, God, we can't get backwards in time to how it used to be. But the idea is that you had your own front door and your own sort of amenity space out of it. It's one that Bill worked on, actually, with us on Hillgate. But when it came down to it, you can't get the values. But, so what's going on there now is likely to be 24 flats instead of, I think it was 16 back-to-back sort of townhouses, if you like. So it's difficult to get houses into the town centre, but that's kind of what it needs to get the balance of people.
Is that a problem, the apartments? Because it's going to be a young person's place to live.
It's not a problem. I just think there's a lot of them coming through at the same time, so it's going to be interesting to see what the actual demand is and how quickly they fill up.
And the community space as well, I think, is important around them.
I think there's a balance as well in Stockport in terms of the different areas. I think the council acknowledged that in terms of you've got that physical barrier of the A6, so you've got what's going on on one side of the A6, and you've got the amount of new apartments, and you'll have that activity in there. You then got the town centre itself. You've then got the underbanks, so you've got those distinct different areas, and it's making sure that actually they all work and they all have that unique character, and they all have that level of investment, that one doesn't just pull away. Because, as I say, the A6 is that physical barrier. You say it's only the road, but it's actually quite a big issue, I think, in terms of that linkage and connectivity within Stockport. So hopefully, that's a key part of that, to make sure that what is successful doesn't then detract from other parts. That's really important, I think.
And from the sort of the occupiers' side, so the people who are moving into these sort of changing and repurposed units and buildings, what are you seeing that they're looking for? Are they looking for more flexible leases? Are they looking for the local authorities to assist in getting that footfall through? How are we attracting those users in?
I think it's you've probably got to differentiate between the traditional high street like Mersey Way of Stockport with all the main national retailers, and then the smaller areas with the smaller units. So the areas of retail that have been worse affected, I think, have been the traditional high streets like Mersey Way, where you've got much larger units with much higher cost base, higher rents and everything else. The rents that you're getting on Mersey Way now are significantly less than they were 15, 20 years ago. And whereas before retailers wanted larger units and they found that the older town centres couldn't provide retailing space that was large enough for them, they've kind of flipped around the other way now, because space is that much more expensive. They don't need as much space, so that's left some of the larger units, particularly those on Mersey Way, struggling. The smaller end of the scale and the more secondary retail, and then if you go out into the neighbourhood centres, is entirely different again. And that's changed because of COVID as well, because you've got more people working at home. So areas like Bramhall and the villages have done very well in terms of the retail offering that they've got there. Smaller units, smaller rents, smaller occupancy costs. A lot easier for somebody to have a go at retail. Because they can afford a rent. A lot of the shops don't pay small business rates to get small business rates relief, so your barrier to entry for the smaller retailers is a lot lower. And so you'll find that in a lot of the residential areas now you don't see that many vacant units, but that's why you've got lots of hairdressers giving it a go. You've got barbers, coffee shops everywhere. Not all of them will make it, but it doesn't really matter because the costs of entry, are that much lower.
Has the co-working taken off in Stockport? We've got Profolk, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, we've been involved in that with Profolk. It's been really successful. And there's been other schemes in Stockport, and that does seem to have worked. And even Cheadle Hume and some of the smaller towns and villages, there's an element of that. Again, it's how far that model can go. I know comparing that, we're talking about Manchester and the city centre, but again, it has changed. The amount of people that are in the office, I mean, is a big point, isn't it? In terms of that knock-on effect on with the city centre or Stockport as a town centre, the amount of people that are coming into the office to work, it has had a big impact on that sort of.
You notice it on the traffic on the roads actually, because Mondays and Fridays.
Work from home days. Work from home days. But it'd been quite strange, not so much town centre, but we've had a real drive from our lot to come into the office for things like incidental learning. You can't get it, can you, when you're working from home, you're locked up and a quick head up, can we have a quick look at this sketch? So we've had, in the immediate aftermath of COVID, everyone was at home and that's fine. But then there was a big push back in. I just wonder how much that's going to be seen sort of in town centres, or are we purely now at a 3-day hybrid week?
I think that seems to be where things are at, doesn't it, really? Is that hybrid sort of, and I think people can get bored of seeing the same four walls. When you're out, doing some work in a coffee shop or just nipping out and having a desk for half a day just to change the scenery and change the environment.
A number of the smaller consultancies that we work with, that they do exactly that. That it is just that ad hoc day and that co-working space for that break, for the meetings. Yeah. And there is a market. Yeah.
The infrastructure's there though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Crack open your laptop, straight onto Teams. You can actually be anywhere.
Yeah.
I don't think I've got a PC in the office now. It's just in a bag. Whatever you rock up to, you start working, and it's. I think that ability. I'm just wondering if there's a potential for things like that to reinvigorate some of the spaces in the town centre. Because you say, if you look at Manchester, there's Spaces, there's Regus, there's a lot of them. Doesn't really seem to be getting picked up in Stockport so much.
I think there's potential for it to happen, really, but I think we'll come on it later in terms of recruitment and training and things like that. But there's still a reason for people to go into the office for learning and training, and for cultural reasons and lots of other reasons why it's good for people to come together. But we can save some of that for the employment really, in terms of what people want and what sort of future employees want. It's sometimes not necessarily aligned with what the employers want.
I think Stockport also are looking at it slightly differently. So they've got the innovation hub, haven't they? We've got Stock, which is going to have the big learning and development centre in there together with the library. So these are community spaces that people are going to be using rather than just the traditional co-working. It's becoming traditional co-working. And maybe a slightly different variation on that, where it's not just one thing, but it's multiple things, and a space can be used that way as well on the high street. Commenters also often state that there's sort of 3 factors that people are looking at if they want to make a high street thrive. Market demand, which we're obviously talking about, which needs to come from both the users and the occupiers. The design, which is becoming increasingly important. And I know we've chatted about designs of towns before and disruptors and how those sorts of things work. And community engagement. It's obviously always been very important through the planning process, but how are you finding these sort of factors and community engagement now, so people are really getting to the bones of not just what the local authority want, but what does everybody else want?
Design's getting lifted significantly. I think, the aspiration for design has increased since COVID. People will very often not accept a pokey little room or shop. So what we find, I suppose, I'm going to say that I'm an architect, I suppose, but it's definitely about the design. But it is seeing, if you do look at, you go back to co-working, you go back to some of these hospitality spaces, you get into a level where it's the smaller town centres are akin to sort of Manchester now. And I think one of the big things that we're finding from our point of view, we've got a huge amount of new build coming through, but actually the retrofit and the sort of improvements of existing asset is also high on the agenda. The funding regime for that's colossal at the moment. There's billions of pounds for people to go and improve the energy efficiency. But very often what we're finding is that there's new build, there's retro, but there's also the space in the middle. You just mentioned it, Claire. That needs just as much attention to invigorate the high street. Is this space in between the public realm and all of these sorts of things, which gives it a character. We've used this phrase, but a place-based approach, and trying to create place within an existing setting is difficult, but we've got to try and focus on that, I think, to make it so attractive that people want to come into the town centre, whether that be to work, to play, to eat.
I think you see that as an example with the interchange, the park. So it's about that arrival in Stockport, making it easy and convenient, which hopefully the interchange up and running will do that. But then that space has got to be attractive. So the park and to bring people in and make that, as I say, a positive experience. Because it is amazing how many people you speak to in the recent years who have experienced something that either the council or an outside body have put on in the town centre. There's a lot of activity going on there. Who have said, "Well, it's the first time I've been into Stockport for years. I didn't realise this." Or that's fantastic. You've got to, if they're going to come in for that one experience, you've got to make that a positive one. Otherwise, they don't come again. So I think that arrival and that entrance to Stockport is really important. So as you say, is that uplifting design. It's about that wider thing of design. It's not just about the building. It's about the whole piece.
It's also going back to the linkage as well. You mentioned it before, Richard, about linking the certain areas together, because you have got some distinct areas. So you've got all the new offices and the station and Stockport 8 and all the rest of it on one side of the A6. The A6 is still quite a barrier. Then you've got the rest of the town centre. On the other side, you've got Mersey Way, you've got Red Rock. They're all distinct areas, but the trick is to link all those together. So when you've got people in Stockport at the station coming down, the new ramp or whatever it is into the interchange, it's what you do with them from there. And I think that's the challenges that we face moving forward, is how do you actually get the people over the road and then sort of get them through Mersey Way and get them into the underbanks, because they're all a bit of a walk away from each other. That's
vital overall. It's even more important, as you mentioned about timing and phasing. If there's a certain number of people, making that difficult now is very hard across all those, say, 4 areas you've talked about. Hopefully in years to come, when everything comes forward and there are much more people and the numbers are much bigger, it's less of an issue. But certainly in the short term, that's going to be quite important to the success of it, and maintaining that. There's a real positivity around Stockport at the minute of what's going on and what's coming forward. But it's maintaining that positivity is going to be really important.
Yeah. I mean, I think some of the initiatives that have happened, things like the Stockport frogs and things like that, and the what Marketing Stockport are doing, what the bid are doing, and stuff like that. In terms
Greater
of
Manchester Town of Culture, 2023,
which is pulling people in on events. The Underbanks events, they're always really well attended. Stuff, the Foodie Friday and things like that. It's bringing people in, and I think even before, when we've done one of the property socials before, we got people up into the market hall. They were saying, once you got them into Stockport, they never realised it was...
That whole area is fantastic. Actually, so the improvement, and the improvement, I think, in the approach from the station, you mentioned, you're only going back 3-4 years, aren't you? You're sort of rocking up on a train and go, oh, wow.
The old dodgy nightclub outside the front of the station. Welcome to Stockport.
Heaven and hell. Here we are.
I can't remember the name, Rob. I knew you'd remember it.
Somebody told me about it. Yeah, it was. And now, Johnny, from your point of view, as an investor developer, somebody's gone first, haven't they? Sort of Capital Centric have gone. They're putting that transport interchange coming in. We've got the apartments. Does that make it more attractive for you to come into Stockport?
You made a great point earlier about funding. As an SME investor and developer, it's quite hard to compete with the likes of Capital and Centric when they're going for the big lumps of funding.
Yeah.
And as great as the MDC is and all the great work they're doing, I do think that there should be more support for the SME investors and developers to fill those gaps in between. there's quite a lot of high street stuff. The streets in between Red Rock and places like that are still very underutilised and could have some cooler stuff down there. But as an investment potential, it just doesn't work at the minute because, there's already some other areas that are much better, much more attractive for the occupiers. And, they need a leg up to make it work. But, there's definitely opportunities. But sometimes it does need that bit of extra support or people that can look a little bit more long-term with their investment strategies.
I think you're right about some of those areas between Mersey and Princes Street because that's hard to deal with. So you look at the underbanks that have done quite well because they've had funding for the shop fronts and, there's lots of different people who've been biding the time there and people have been buying things up there and just waiting for it to happen. But some of those areas that you mentioned, Tony, they're a lot harder to get to, but that's really where your SME investor's more likely to go.
Absolutely.
And again, that comes back to linkage really in terms of how you make that all part of the bigger picture.
Do you think that's going to start to need a wider master plan, a regenerational plan? Because do we miss that in Stockport? Because if you look at some of the sort of the wider visions in Manchester, in Birkenhead or whatever it happens to be, we perhaps don't quite have that wider strategy.
Yeah, I mean, Manchester's got the strategic regeneration frameworks. They look on a much bigger picture. I think if you look at that in Stockport, it's commendable what they've done, but it's all one side of the A6 in terms of that framework. In terms of the bigger piece, some of those others are smaller pockets and they're coming together. But then it comes back to that linkage again and that integration. So
I'm just thinking, you mentioned design before, Claire, and if you go somewhere like Trafford, where they've just introduced their design guidelines. Is that going to help us set a standard of design and an aspiration for us to kind of say, okay, look, this is going to be where we need to hit? I mean, we're having a bit of a nightmare in Trafford because they're really quite tough and they're implementing it pretty hard. But actually what it is doing is making sure that certain levels of design, aspiration, the wider vision of what Trafford will look like are set out for everyone. And I just wonder whether that's something that could be picked up in a Stockport that's actually got massive opportunities. The 2 hours to London, 20 minutes is it to Manchester? Not even that.
Less.
10,
Yeah.
11 minutes on the train, yeah. It's so close.
So it's got pretty much everything rolling for it. It's got some of the most affluent areas in the area as well, if you get up to the posh places like Bramhall. But also, it's got some areas that could need the leg up.
Yeah.
So just getting that balance right with perhaps a wider vision, I'm not sure, possible.
I think we've got one Stockport, haven't we, who are starting consultation on a local plan.
Right, okay.
That's been sort of running along behind the scenes, and I think there's a date around now when there's going to start some more consultation on the sort of local plan, but there's a lot of things that are already fixed in place, aren't there? So things are we've already got the sections, haven't we, as to where we are at the moment with the market. We've got Mersey Way, as we've said, we've got the interchange, so they're already there. So it's what you were saying about what fits in between and what people want in between, and the little bits.
Yeah, and it's not all barber shops, is it? So
Yeah.
there needs to be other things that we can do with those places.
I think that new local plan will go some way to looking at some of those design issues, but I don't think it'll look at that from that strategic. I mean, that's a whole podcast on itself, Stockport and its local plan, but we'll save that one for another day.